Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Speak Smart podcast. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into some really fantastic advice for learning English.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we're going to be looking at some key insights from a conversation between Sophia and James.
Okay.
Two experienced English instructors who host their own podcast all about language learning.
Nice.
So if you're ready to make some serious progress with your English skills, get ready for some practical tips.
Sounds good.
And maybe even a few aha moments along the way.
I love those aha moments.
Me too.
You know what I find really interesting about Sophia and James's approach is that they steer clear of any magic shortcuts or secret methods.
Right.
Instead, they focus on something much more sustainable, making English a natural part of your daily life.
I love that. So it's less about hitting the books for hours on end and more about finding ways to weave English into your everyday routine.
Exactly. And by doing so, they argue that you can significantly reduce the feeling of overwhelm that many language learners experience.
Yeah, I can see that.
Sophia and James suggest incorporating English into things you're already doing, like listening to music or podcasts, reading articles or stories, and even thinking in English.
That's a brilliant point about thinking in English.
Right.
It sounds like a simple thing,
Right.
but I can imagine it being really powerful. Did they give any specific examples of how someone could start doing that?
Absolutely. They recommend starting with basic descriptions of your daily activities, even if it feels a bit silly at first.
Okay.
Things like, I am drinking coffee, or the sky is blue.
Got it.
It might seem overly simplistic, but the key is to train your brain to use English more spontaneously without constantly translating back and forth in your head.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The more you do it, the more automatic it becomes.
That makes so much sense. It's like building a mental muscle.
Yeah.
And speaking of building muscles, Sophia and James also offer a ton of tips for using English in real-world situations. This is where things start to get really practical, right?
Absolutely. And it's where you can really see the difference between knowing words on paper and actually being able to use them confidently.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They suggest practicing English in a variety of real-life situations, such as ordering food at a restaurant,
Okay.
shopping for clothes, asking for directions, and even just striking up casual conversations with people you encounter.
That sounds a bit daunting, to be honest. What if you freeze up or make a mistake?
That's totally normal.
Yeah.
And Sophia and James address that head-on. They emphasize the importance of not being afraid to ask for help or clarification.
I like that.
If someone is speaking too quickly, don't hesitate to politely ask them to slow down. Most people are very understanding, especially when they know you're learning.
That's a good reminder. And it's probably less intimidating to practice with people who are also learning English. Did Sophia and James mention anything about that?
They did. They highly recommend joining English-speaking groups or online communities.
Okay.
These environments can provide a more relaxed and supportive space to practice without feeling self-conscious.
That makes sense.
Plus, it's a great way to connect with other learners and share tips and experiences. It can really transform learning English from a solitary activity into a more social and engaging experience.
That's a fantastic point. And speaking of engaging experiences, let's talk about technology. Sophia and James highlight this as a major advantage for modern learners, right? I mean, we have more tools and resources than ever before to help us learn English.
Exactly. And they encourage learners to make the most of these tools.
Yeah.
For example, they suggest using language learning apps, watching movies or TV shows with the subtitles, and even changing our phone or computer settings to English. It's all about creating an immersive experience where you're constantly surrounded by the language.
I love that idea of immersing yourself. It's like building your own little English-speaking world, even if you're not physically in an English-speaking country. I'm thinking about how I could do that even more in my own life. What were some of Sophia and James's other ideas for creating this kind of English environment?
They recommended things like listening to English radio while commuting, watching English news, and even cooking from recipes written in English.
Wow.
It's about finding creative ways to integrate the language into your daily routine, even in small ways.
Yeah.
And they're big proponents of using social media. Following English-speaking accounts on platforms like Instagram or Twitter can provide bite-sized learning opportunities.
That's so smart.
Oh.
It can feel less overwhelming than committing to a full-blown language course or textbook. It's like sneaking in little bits of learning throughout your day.
Right.
I'm curious, though, with all these different methods and activities, how do they suggest staying motivated and actually sticking with it?
That's a great question, and Sophia and James offer some really insightful advice on that front. Their main message: it's all about setting realistic goals and breaking down those larger aspirations into smaller, achievable steps.
Okay.
Instead of aiming for fluency overnight, focus on mastering one specific skill or area at a time. That's such a practical tip. It's easy to get overwhelmed when you feel like you have this huge mountain to climb, but breaking it down into smaller steps makes it much more manageable. Did they talk about anything else to help with motivation?
They really emphasize the importance of celebrating progress no matter how small those victories might seem.
Okay.
Rewards are a key part of this.
Okay, so what are we talking about here? Candy bars, shopping sprees.
Not necessarily. Sophia and James suggested simple things like watching an episode of your favorite show, indulging in a hobby, or even just taking a well-deserved break from studying. The point is to acknowledge and appreciate your efforts, which reinforces that sense of accomplishment and helps you stay motivated.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like giving yourself permission to enjoy the process, which is so important when it comes to learning anything new. Now, I'm curious about something else. Sophia and James mentioned making English learning fun. I mean, studying a new language can feel like a chore sometimes, but they seem to believe that having fun is crucial for long-term success. They do, and their reasoning is fascinating. They believe that enjoyment actually transforms the learning process. When you're engaged and having fun studying, stops feeling like an obligation and starts to feel like something you genuinely look forward to.
Okay, so how do we inject more fun into the learning process? Did Sophia and James have any specific suggestions?
Absolutely. They have a whole list of fun activities.
Okay, like what?
Watching movies or TV shows, listening to music, trying tongue twisters, playing word games, writing stories or poems. These are just a few of the things they recommend.
I love that. It sounds like they're encouraging us to embrace our playful side.
They are. And they're big believers in the power of playfulness.
Oh, nice.
Whether it's recording yourself speaking in different accents for fun, trying out new vocabulary words in everyday conversations, or even just talking to yourself in English, it's all about experimenting and discovering what works best for you.
That's such a great reminder that learning a language doesn't have to be rigid and serious all the time. It's about finding ways to make it enjoyable and personalized. Now, while we're on this topic of personalization, let's shift gears a bit and talk about tracking progress. Sophia and James stress the importance of this as a way to stay motivated and achieve fluency, right?
That's right. And they offer some really practical tips for how to do it effectively.
Like what?
The key, they say, is to set specific measurable goals rather than just vague aspirations.
Okay.
For example, instead of saying, I want to improve my listening skills, you might set a goal like, I want to be able to understand 80% of an English language podcast by the end of the month.
That makes total sense. It's much easier to track your progress when you have a concrete target to aim for.
Exactly. And they recommend checking in on your progress regularly, asking yourself questions like, am I getting closer to my goal? What do I need to change or adjust to improve?
It's all about that ongoing self-reflection and making adjustments along the way, right? It's like having a personal roadmap for your language learning journey.
That's a great way to put it. And they also recommend keeping a learning journal where you can jot down what you studied, what challenges you encountered, and what you did well. Over time, you start to see patterns and gain a clearer understanding of your strengths and weaknesses. You can also use it to record new words or phrases you've learned and practice using them in sentences.
I love that idea. It's a tangible way to see how far you've come and celebrate your progress along the way. Now, speaking of celebrating progress, Sophia and James also had some interesting thoughts about how we view mistakes. I'm curious to hear more about that.
They have a really empowering perspective on this, which I think is so important for language learners. They emphasize that mistakes are not something to be feared or ashamed of. In fact, each mistake is an opportunity to learn and grow. It's about shifting our mindset from striving for perfection to focusing on progress.
That's such a liberating way to think about it. It takes the pressure off and allows us to embrace the messiness of the learning process.
Exactly. And they encourage us to be kind to ourselves, recognizing that mistakes are inevitable, especially when we're stepping outside of our comfort zones. They remind us that the more we practice, the more we experiment, and the more we allow ourselves to make those mistakes, the faster we'll learn and improve.
That's fantastic advice. It's all about embracing the journey with all its twists and turns and celebrating every step of the way. Now I'm curious to know more about their thoughts on consistency. I'm sure they get asked that all the time. How much time should you spend studying? How often? Etc.
They do, and their advice is surprisingly simple but profound.
Yeah.
Even if you only have 10 or 15 minutes a day to dedicate to English practice, that's okay.
Okay.
What matters most is that you're showing up regularly and making consistent efforts over time. It's about building those positive habits and making language learning an integral part of your daily routine.
It's like that old saying, little by little, a little becomes a lot. Small, consistent actions can lead to big results over time.
Exactly. And if you ever feel stuck or like you're not making progress, Sophia and James encourage you to try switching things up. Maybe you explore a new app, watch a different genre of movie, or read a different type of book.
Oh, interesting.
Variety can be a powerful tool.
It keeps things fresh and prevents boredom, right? It's like adding a little spice to your language learning routine.
That's a great way to put it. It's all about finding those activities that spark your curiosity and ignite your passion for learning.
I love that.
Yeah.
And speaking of passion, Sophia and James seem to have a very holistic view of language learning. It's about more than just grammar and vocabulary, right?
That's right. They emphasize the importance of connecting with English-speaking cultures through things like movies, books, food, and even virtual tours.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's about understanding not just the words, but the people, the history, and the stories behind those words. It sounds like they're encouraging us to dive into the richness of the culture.
Exactly. And they highlight the power of community when it comes to language learning. They talk about the benefits of joining English classes, study groups, or online forums to connect with other learners.
There's something so motivating about being part of a community of like-minded people who are all on the same journey. It provides a sense of support, encouragement, and accountability.
Absolutely. And they also stress the importance of remembering your why. Why are you learning English? What are your goals and aspirations? Keeping those reasons front of mind can help you stay focused and motivated, especially when you encounter challenges.
It's like tapping into that inner drive, that deeper sense of purpose that keeps you moving forward.
Exactly. And they remind us that everyone's journey is different, so it's important not to compare yourself to others. It's about focusing on your own progress and celebrating your own successes, no matter how small they may seem.
It's about embracing your unique path and enjoying the ride.
Yes, and recognizing that language learning is a lifelong journey.
And with that, we've reached the end of part 1 of our deep dive. We'll be back in just a moment with part 2, so stay tuned.
Welcome back to part 2 of our deep dive into Sophia and James's incredible tips for learning English.
I'm so excited to continue this conversation. We were just talking about the importance of embracing your own unique journey as a language learner. I think that's such a powerful reminder that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to language learning.
It's about finding what works best for you and creating a learning experience that's both effective and enjoyable.
Exactly. Speaking of finding what works best, I'm curious to hear more about Sophia and James's thoughts on specific learning tools and resources. Do they have any favorites that they mentioned?
They did. They're big proponents of using language learning apps, especially for things like vocabulary building, grammar practice, and pronunciation. There are so many fantastic apps out there these days, and many of them are free or very affordable.
That's great to know. It's amazing how accessible language learning has become thanks to technology. I'm curious though, with so many options out there, how do you choose the right app? Did Sophia and James offer any guidance on that?
They recommend trying out a few different apps to see which ones resonate with you the most. Some apps are more game-based, while others focus on more traditional learning methods. It's all about finding what aligns with your learning style and preferences.
That's great advice. It's like trying on different pairs of shoes until you find the perfect fit. And speaking of finding the perfect fit, did Sophia and James talk about any other learning resources besides apps?
They did. They're also big fans of using online dictionaries and thesauruses, especially for expanding vocabulary and exploring the nuances of words. And they highly recommend online pronunciation guides, which can be incredibly helpful for improving your accent and clarity.
I love that. It's like having a whole library of language learning resources right at your fingertips.
Yeah.
And I imagine these resources can be especially helpful when you're trying to incorporate more English into your daily life, like we talked about earlier.
Exactly. You can use these resources to look up new words you encounter in books or movies, practice pronunciation while you're cooking or commuting, and even challenge yourself with fun word games or quizzes.
That's a brilliant point.
Yeah.
It's all about making language learning a part of your everyday routine, not just something you do in isolated study sessions.
Precisely. And they encourage learners to seek out opportunities for real-world practice, even if it feels a bit scary at first. Ordering food at a restaurant, asking for directions, chatting with a neighbor. These are all fantastic ways to put your English skills to the test and build confidence.
That's such a powerful reminder that language learning isn't just about memorizing words and rules, it's about using those words and rules in real life situations. And it's okay to make mistakes along the way.
Absolutely. In fact, they encourage learners to embrace those mistakes as valuable learning opportunities. They remind us that everyone makes mistakes, even native English speakers. And each mistake is a chance to learn, adjust, and improve.
That's a great mindset to have. It takes the pressure off and allows us to approach language learning with a sense of curiosity and playfulness.
Exactly. And they emphasize the importance of being kind to ourselves throughout the process. Learning a new language is a challenging but rewarding journey, and it's important to celebrate every milestone along the way.
I couldn't agree more. It's about acknowledging our efforts and appreciating how far we've come. And it's about enjoying the process, even when it gets tough.
They also talk about the importance of finding a learning buddy or joining a language exchange group.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I can imagine how beneficial it would be to connect with someone who's also learning English.
They suggest finding someone who has similar goals and learning styles. You can practice speaking together, share resources and tips, and motivate each other along the way.
It's like having a built-in cheerleader and accountability partner. And it makes the learning process so much more fun and engaging.
Exactly. And they remind us that even small, consistent efforts can lead to significant progress over time.
So it's not about cramming in hours of study every day. It's about finding those little pockets of time to practice and integrate English into your daily life.
Exactly. And they encourage learners to be patient with themselves.
Learning a new language is a marathon, not a sprint. It takes time, effort, and dedication. And I think it's so important to celebrate those small victories along the way.
They suggest setting realistic goals and tracking your progress. Maybe it's mastering a certain number of vocabulary words each week, finishing a chapter in a book, or having a conversation with a native speaker without feeling too nervous. Each achievement, no matter how small, is a step in the right direction.
And I love that they emphasize that language learning should be an enjoyable experience.
They suggest finding activities that you genuinely enjoy and incorporating them into your learning routine. Maybe it's watching movies, listening to music, reading books, or even playing video games in English. The key is to make it fun and engaging.
That's such a great reminder. When you enjoy something, you're more likely to stick with it and make progress. It becomes less of a chore and more of a hobby or even a passion.
They also talk about the benefits of immersing yourself in English-speaking cultures. This could involve traveling to an English-speaking country, attending cultural events, or even just connecting with people online who speak English.
It's about expanding your horizons and experiencing the language in a more authentic and meaningful way.
Exactly. And they encourage learners to be curious and ask questions.
Language learning is all about exploration and discovery. It's about challenging yourself to step outside of your comfort zone and embrace the unknown.
They remind us that learning a new language opens up a world of opportunities. It allows us to connect with people from different cultures, access new information and resources, and even advance in our careers.
It's a gift that keeps on giving, and it's something that anyone can achieve with the right mindset and approach.
That's the beauty of language learning. It's a journey that's accessible to everyone.
And it's a journey that's worth taking.
Sophia and James leave us with a powerful message. Language learning is transformative. It's not just about acquiring new words. It's about expanding our perspectives, challenging our assumptions, and ultimately becoming more empathetic and engaged global citizens.
That's a beautiful sentiment. And I think it perfectly captures the essence of what it means to learn a new language.
It's about more than just communication. It's about connection.
And with that, we've reached the end of part 2. We'll be back in just a moment for our final thoughts and wrap up in part 3. So stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone. This is part 3 of our deep dive into Sophia and James's amazing advice for learning English. We've covered so much ground already, from weaving English into your daily life to embracing mistakes as opportunities for growth.
We have. It's been a really interesting conversation.
It has. And we've explored the transformative potential of language learning.
Yeah,
How it can open up new worlds and connect us with people from different cultures.
absolutely.
It's been an incredible journey so far. And I'm so excited to wrap things up with some final takeaways and inspiring thoughts from Sophia and James.
Me too. One of the key messages they leave us with is the importance of consistency.
Okay.
They remind us that even small, dedicated efforts repeated over time can lead to remarkable results. It's about showing up for yourself even on those days when you don't feel like it.
It's about making language learning a habit, something that becomes an integral part of your daily routine.
Exactly. And they encourage us to be patient with ourselves. Learning a new language is a journey, not a destination. There will be ups and downs, moments of frustration and moments of triumph.
It's all part of the process.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that every step you take, no matter how small, is a victory worth celebrating.
Absolutely.
Did they talk about anything else?
They also highlight the importance of finding a learning style that resonates with you. Some people thrive in structured classroom environments, while others prefer a more self-directed approach. There's no right or wrong way to learn, as long as you're engaged and motivated.
It's about discovering what works best for you and creating a learning experience that's both effective and enjoyable.
Exactly. They remind us that language learning is not a solo endeavor. Connecting with others who are also learning English can provide invaluable support, motivation, and inspiration.
Yeah, for sure.
Whether it's joining a language exchange group, finding a tandem partner, or simply chatting with friends who speak English, surrounding yourself with a community can make the journey much more rewarding.
It's about sharing your experiences, celebrating each other's successes, and learning from each other's mistakes.
Exactly. And they encourage us to be curious and adventurous. Don't be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone, experiment with different learning methods, and explore new aspects of English-speaking cultures.
Language learning is all about discovery. It's about opening ourselves up to new possibilities, new perspectives, and new ways of seeing the world.
Absolutely. And they remind us that the benefits of learning English extend far beyond the ability to communicate. It can boost our cognitive skills, enhance our creativity, and even make us more empathetic and understanding individuals.
It's about expanding our minds and connecting with the world in deeper and more meaningful ways.
So true. Sophia and James leave us with a powerful call to action. Embrace the journey.
I love that.
Learning a new language is a transformative experience that can enrich our lives in countless ways.
It's about challenging ourselves, expanding our horizons, and ultimately becoming more engaged and connected global citizens.
Beautifully said. So to recap what we've learned from Sophia and James today, make English a part of your daily life.
Okay.
Find ways to make learning fun and engaging, actively track your progress, and never be afraid to embrace those mistakes as valuable learning opportunities.
And above all, remember that every step you take on this language learning journey is a victory worth celebrating.
Yes. Wonderful. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of English language learning.
Yeah, this is great.
We hope you've gained some valuable insights and inspiration from Sophia and James's advice.
Yeah, absolutely. And remember, the most important thing is to simply start. Take that first step. Embrace the journey and never stop exploring the incredible power of language. Thank you for listening to the Speak Smart podcast and subscribe to my channel. Like the hit button.